under plastic, where the Preamble Ramble gets longer every time, and we love it.
We love you for loving it.
I wish I would have gone dun 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 dun. I caught on like halfway through that you were doing the rhythm in your head, and I was like, oh, I could have done that.
Yeah. Again, there's zero planning. John had no idea what I was gonna do. Just like Disney princesses last time, we're going hair metal this time. You know?
Yeah.
I like to mix it up.
What's new in your world, Scooty Poo?
Oh, buddy! This last weekend, I went to the CMON Expo at the Game Center, where they had the U.S. Natties for A Song of Ice and Fire.
So it was the Natty Ice.
It was. Yeah. U.S. Nationals were at Game Center in Roseville, Minnesota, so right in my backyard. And I had time to play. There were 6 games played, and I had time to play 3 of them on day one. And so I went and showed up for those 3 games. I went 1-2, so not a winning record, but I had so much more fun this time than I did last time. I don't know why that was. Maybe because I perceived that I was going to do better last time, and this time I kind of just went in knowing I wanted to have fun. I've played a single Season 3 game, so I don't really know. I played a Stark player, and I totally forgot what Stark does. So I wasn't going to do well, but I had a lot of fun. Got a W under my belt. Round 3 was against good old Dan Mawson.
Oh, fucking Danimals the Animals.
Yeah,
Collector of Rocks.
Collector of Rocks, yes. It was a great time. I met with Pete and Adam from Cool Mini or Not, and they were just super nice. All the people there were super nice. Brett, the guy who's running the competition or the tournament, is an amazing Song of Ice and Fire player. He was also just a great TO for the event. And Mickey Massarath online, who's like the greatest song player right now. He made the trip over from England here, and he did win it all. Sadly, a British person is winning U.S. Nationals.
Wow.
But I will say the person he was fighting against was someone from our local area here in Minnesota. And he was playing Targaryen, which doesn't mean much to you, but right now Targaryen isn't in a great spot. So it was really cool to see a Free Folk player and a Targaryen player playing in the finals and not a Night's Watch player or a Lannister player. So it's cool. It's cool to see the mix up.
Free fuck, huh?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, man. Okay, maybe he's got that counter meta, right? So Targaryen might not be powerful, but they're powerful against the things that other powerful things are.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe.
There's that. And also, Targaryens have dragons, baby. No one else got dragons, and they're good. They're still good.
Word on the street is dragons equals dead dudes.
Yes, and dragons and Drogo is I feel like always going to be a great combo.
Yeah, I mean other people are just using dudes.
Yeah, dude.
You don't bring dudes to a dragon fight.
Yeah, old white dudes against dragons.
Come on.
GG, bro.
Okay, so how many people were at this tournament? Is there a lot of people?
It was a 59-player event. They actually sold out the 120 slots because a lot of them had gone to people who had qualified and won other events. They didn't make sure they were coming. They assumed they were coming, and they didn't show up. And so there was a ton of available space if you were actually able to show up that was not accounted for. So it was a 60-player tournament approximately, which is the biggest one I've ever been in.
Cool. I mean that's no joke from number of players.
Yeah.
That's pretty sweet.
But not every game, most games that CMON makes in the play area, just out and set up with employees there to help you demo the games if you want to check them out. They had Mordred there, their new Arthurian lore game based on the timeline where Mordred wins and he's controlling Camelot and shit's hitting the fan. And so there's a lot of cool things you could do. I got a big old swag bag, had a bunch of cool stuff in it as well.
Oh, sweet.
It was a great time.
Is there anybody there to talk to them about the returning of Crystal Brush?
I did. I mentioned to Pete that. I was like, you guys are doing that in Thailand? And he was like, yeah, we're doing that. I kind of wanted to ask him if he would fly me out to Thailand for a little cheeky Crystal Brush.
Yeah, come on, man.
That'd be
listen, let me paint my Soggy Bottom boys here and bring them out to Crystal Brush.
Soggy Bottom boys.
Yeah. So, I mean, God, that's just a great theme for you to do for the rest of your Soggy Bottom boys there.
Let's call him that.
I thought you was a toad.
I do not get this reference.
Oh, man. It's Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, okay. I have not seen that.
Sorrow.
I have not seen that movie, but I am very aware of it.
Okay. Yeah, you need to watch it.
Do I? There's
Yeah.
a lot of movies that I need to watch.
You need to watch it. Like Training Day, check that off the list.
Got it.
Next. Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Okay.
Okay. You need to watch that one.
Okay.
Okay. What do I got here? What do I got to talk about today? Another full day tattoo session. Last Friday.
Mm.
So we started working on the lion on my upper arm.
I saw the classic soap wipe away reveal shot.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, that was it. So, well, 6+ hours sitting on the table, and it didn't. There's still a lot to go on that one, but I probably have at least two more full sessions. I have 2 more full sessions booked and not paid for, but down payment made on. So one in middle October, one in middle November. So by VinciCon, I should be pretty close to getting my sleeve done. But yeah, it's been a process. This one, there was some filler stuff that was right on the elbow, and so the start of the session was just tattooing my elbow. And he's really smart. Suki is he's my tattoo artist. In that, at the start of my session, no matter what I'm doing, he starts with the most painful area. Like the time where he did the inside of the wrist here, he started with that.
Yeah.
The next session, he started what do they call it, the ditch in my elbow. He started with that. And at first I was like, oh man, it just feels like the whole session is just going to fucking suck because it sucks so much at the beginning, but it's not. Because as the hours go on, it's just like it's compounding. It doesn't matter if you're moving areas. It's like the compounding soreness and just rawness just adds up and adds up. And if you end with that, I was like, I would have been tapping, but I did not. He had his apprentice there, which was really interesting because he was like explaining a lot of things to her and like a lot of how he uses different tips and different shaders. And he does like his own mixes of creating shades that are not just out of the bottle for different opacities. And how he did what he did. It was just really interesting to try to focus on listening to that and not on the pain in my elbow. But yeah, he was like, but it made me feel better too because he was finishing out the elbow and she was like, okay. She was asking him some questions and he's like, oh, but usually when you do that elbow like that, it's going to be a lot more squirming and stuff, but he doesn't move. And it's really good. I was like, I felt like a real tough guy.
Oh,
like,
yeah, you're a tough guy.
Look at me. You can fucking shoot me in the shoulder, and I'll be like Van Damme and just keep going.
I can take it.
For the rest of the movie. Frozen Pop-Tarts. Okay, next thing I wrote down was frozen Pop-Tarts. Dude, I heard a little hack that Pop-Tarts taste amazing frozen, so I had to buy a box of s'mores Pop-Tarts. You ever had a frozen Pop-Tart before?
No.
You like Pop-Tarts?
Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Pop-Tarts, but I know they're so terrible for you that I just never want to buy them because I know I'll eat them.
They're the equivalent of eating a Snickers for breakfast. I've heard that. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard
Sounds about right. If you eat both of them, for sure. Yeah, there's 2 in that package. Frozen Pop-Tarts, fucking 2 thumbs up, dude.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What changes about them?
The consistency of a couple things changes. So the frosting that's on top, it gets like a nice, almost like a snap crunch to it, while still like holding the flavor, and then the inside turns to like this like gel. It's like a really nice texture.
Is it especially cold? Like,
no, they're not even
colder than the outside.
Yes, the outside is colder, but like the actual pastry itself isn't like crispy like a frozen Snickers bar.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's colder and has a little bit more snap to it, but like the texture is nice and it doesn't taste quite so like chemically, because those things are like, what is this preservatives are in these things?
Yeah. So it's keeping it alive.
So I thought I'd share that golden nugget of wisdom with the Goody Peepees. Freeze your Pop-Tarts. You'll thank me for it later. Okay. And the last thing I want to talk about in Preamble Ramble, I've had for a while now, I've had a little bug in my bonnet about trying to get back to painting something for a game, painting something that I'll be using at the tabletop, in addition to like one-offs of D&D characters and stuff. But I don't really count that, although I probably should, because I end up using those way more than I use stuff for miniature war games. But I'm making a leap into Kill Team, baby.
I think Kill Team's the right GW game to pick.
Yeah, I like Warcry as well, and I'm going to do a Warcry warband, but I just was really struggling on what to pick for Warcry, because there's a lot of those fresh out of the box ones, that Warcry teams that look badass. But I also think, like, from a rules perspective, I think those ones are usually like shittier at the game than just like picking like a faction and building your team around the best versions of the models that are in those factions.
Yeah, dude, my vampire, the Soulblight team in Warcry is fucking insane. Like, the standard Blood Knights have so many hit points. It's crazy how you would get through, like, 2 vampires in a game. I don't know how you would. So I kind of felt that when I played it the 1 or 2 times I played it.
Blood Knights feel like the ideal unit in that game because in the times that I've played it before, it really felt like having movement, having cav was really good because getting around to places is really important. So if you have like hard to kill cav that also can dish out some damage, that just feels like a really strong thing. Because I remember when Sam and I played and he was playing at this Stormcast, like them moving like 4 inches, it was just like if they got to you, they could lock you down or they could put a hurting on you. But I was kind of like, my boner boys on horses were just like, get me the fuck away from you.
Yeah.
Go steal those points over there.
Yeah. I think the one thing that Warcry has to try to balance that out is that they often have elevation in the game, and Cav can't go up elevation in the game at all, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why the Ghosty boys are probably good because they can just like float anywhere. They don't have to go up. And their speed is out. Their spoopy speed is really pretty high.
Spooper speed.
Dude, moving at spooper speed across this bridge right over there to that little coin that we all need to stand on because apparently that's
that fucking coin, dude.
Everyone's got to stand on coins. And it's just like, oh man, that'd be hilarious. We do a skit that's like a complete reenactment of like World War II.
Like a battle, but yeah, everyone's just like standing on a fucking coin.
Yeah, just like running for like the trenches in the World War I warfare, and you jump into the trench, and there's just like 3 German dudes standing on the coin there.
Yeah, and it's like a light up coin, and then like fucking changes, and everyone like fucking runs to the next one, and like fuck, and like they go somewhere else.
They just leave. They don't even shoot each other.
Yeah. They're kind of like tripping each other on the way to the next coin. Yeah, that's funny.
Just up in the corner of the screen and just says like CP or some shit. It's just blue. Turns over to 2.
Some score in the sky. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Oh no. So yeah, that's kind of my jam right now. So we're doing a kill team, and I'm doing Space Marines, and partially because they had this cool box because. They just come in, these Warhammer heroes come in a box, and then they all have a data card or whatever they play for the game, and together they make a kill team. And there's different guys. There's like one Reaver guy. There's one Sniper guy. There's
a good mix.
Yeah, and they're kind of like sculpted, kind of like the Underworld's war bands, where they're all like a very unique, different pose and sculpt and stuff. I'm like, I'm not gonna get bored with this. Also, they come on a sculpted base like Underworld, so I don't have to worry about building the base.
There you go, dude.
And I'm just like, oh, and then I gotta go to this problem of figuring out which frickin' chapter I'm gonna pick.
So are these models only obtainable from this set?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Typically, the Warhammer Heroes ones are they're like individual dudes in a blind box. You don't know which one you're getting.
It's like colored plastic too sometimes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like a blue plastic.
Okay.
I think so, unless they maybe I would guess because in the past they've never come out with those in a different set, as far as I know. Like there's just a one way to get them. But
do they have sculpted chapter markers on their shoulder pads or like on their belts or like?
Oh, I did not check that.
Okay.
I did not check that. I may have to check that.
If you're stuck with Ultramarines, are you gonna dip and do it?
Shave those fuckers off. I'm gonna do. I painted enough. I painted Ultramarines of the Terminators from that new box.
That's true. Do you have a favorite Loyalist chapter?
No.
I
think like the emo. What are they? Ravenclaw. Yeah,
Yes.
Ravenclaw.
I think it's called. I think it's Ravenwing.
No, it's not Ravenwing.
It's not Ravenwing. It's not Ravenclaw though. It's fucking Harry Potter, bro.
I would just name them Ravenclaw and just paint them.
What's the Shrike? Shrike is the chapter master of this place.
It's Raven is in their name.
It is. I feel so stupid right now. Space Marine Shrike. His name is Caven Shrike. Ravengard.
Shrek. Oh, so close.
Yeah. Yeah. Shrek of Ravengard.
Yes. Yeah, so those, but their color scheme is pretty boring.
Yeah.
But they are, they're the cool emo boys. So that's cool.
Yeah. I think I like Black Templar and Dark Angels. I kind of see them as one thing because they seem very similar in like design aesthetic. I like those guys. But yeah.
Yeah. Now we get to what we painted. That's a good transition here, is because I painted a different Space Marine, and I was originally going to paint him Dark Angels. And I decided instead to paint them Salamanders just because I wanted a more vibrant version of the color because I thought that that would help showcase weathering, which is the point of the video of using weathering pencils for all different kinds of weathering on the model. That having a brighter central tone would help show some of the weathering better, whether if it's pretty muted or dark like Dark Angels are. You can kind of miss some things. So that's what I decided to do with him, and I was pretty happy with that. But the weathering pencils are really an interesting animal. There's a lot of testing, and I did watch some videos and did some research on like how to use them, and I was kind of surprised how much variety once you kind of figure out how the tool works and then how you want to go about it. There's a lot more variability, especially when you start working in a damp or a dry brush into the workflow process to feather out, to create streaking, to push it where you want, remove it if it got too much in one area. So yeah, I've got layers of chipping on there. I've got layers of dust. I've got a couple different colors of rust. I've got some verdigris and some dust on the gun. And honestly, I really enjoyed it because I could have like a handful of pencils out and I could knock out and kind of like work quickly with the different colors, like kind of all simultaneously. And just, it felt like I could get a variety of different effects pretty quickly.
Okay.
As opposed to if I'm working with enamels or anything that requires mineral spirits, or pigment powders, you often don't really have a lot of control over a pigment powder. Using acrylics to do weathering is absolutely doable, but you are on a much tighter time restraint in terms of until the thing just dries, and then it is what it is.
What is this?
Just weathering with acrylics as opposed to these. These are grease-based, water-soluble, meaning you can reactivate them with a damp brush, even as they're drying or after they've dried, and it takes 24 to 48 hours to fully cure, and then they're just set for good. But like, the big thing that I really liked was I could go heavier-handed on the rust stuff and just remove until it felt right.
Okay.
Whereas usually when I'm doing weathering and stuff, the worry is I don't want to overdo it because you kind of just cover up.
You got to sneak up on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then oftentimes that sneak up process feels like it ends up taking me more time than I wanted to spend on this step.
Yeah.
Where I don't need to sneak. I can just dampen the pencil, jab it all around, and then remove and reposition and streaking or whatever until I like it. And so
yeah. So I watched that video too, and I was curious. Did you ever consider like sharpening the pencils, like so they're super sharp, so you could literally draw into a recess to like get it more accurate? Because when I saw you applying it, it was kind of like you were applying it pre-wetted, so it was like kind of like a paint almost, and then kind of like doing that subtraction step with the brush. Did you ever try sharpening it?
I didn't. The reason why, and that would certainly work. One thing that from the research I did is that their lead is actually fairly soft.
Okay.
And so you would want to do it with like a really, really sharp hobby knife, because without the worry of like you're just going to snap the thing off as you're trying to shave it.
Okay.
But once you dampen it, it gets kind of, the texture of it gets kind of muddy.
Like the whole tip would get kind of like,
yes.
Okay.
Which is good because that allows a thicker amount to get off. But if you were to sharpen it, you probably could get more inexact and stuff, and probably do a better job of getting really exact on the chipping. I wanted to try it from a like, how good is the initial effect without really fucking with it a bunch, and how efficient is this as a fairly fast way to do weathering across, when you have a unit of 20 of these dudes or whatever. Is it something that you can replicate? Because otherwise, if you're getting into too much like high level weathering, I actually think this stuff would really work for high level weathering. I plan on trying it for display stuff, but if it can go do a job relatively quickly and create interesting effects that doesn't require mineral spirits, I was pretty happy with that. Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of fun, and it was didn't take a ton of time. I did spritz from below, if you saw in the video, of the purple for the shadows, and it doesn't read anywhere as purple, but it just creates a shadow as opposed to dark green over a vibrant green. It just creates just a little bit of depth that I really think it just creates a little bit more color interest in the model.
Definitely.
So
There was one person that commented on your video, and they were like, "Thank you for trying out pencils. Like, I know it's not for me." And then I looked at the end result you got, and I'm looking at it now in person, and I'm just like, this just looks like a weathered model. I don't know if like the result is like, oh yeah, you use colored pencils.
right.
It's like you kind of got a similar weathered effect to pigments or to acrylic paint, but
Yeah.
just an easier way to get there. So I didn't get that person's comment because it just seems like a pretty good weathered effect.
Yeah, it was like anything. It was learning, and by the time I had finished the whole model, I'm like, okay, I think I started to get the hang of how these work.
Yeah, yeah.
And like anything, there is an on-ramp to kind of figure out how to use the tool
Yep.
and things that worked and didn't work. And I know the thing that kind of excites me about them is I feel like the ocean is deeper, and I've just kind of scratched the surface
Yep.
with them, which is cool because those kinds of things, you don't have to push your education in. You just, as you use them, you'll kind of discover things at your own speed. But just like pull them out of the drawer, fuck around with something. And I felt like I didn't feel like I was ever going to get myself into a situation where it was going to take me a ton of work to fix something or unfuck something. And that to me is a kind of product that I find myself grabbing more often if I feel like the potential issues I can get myself into, I can't easily get myself out of. This is oftentimes things like just throwing on a thick oil wash on something. I know if I fuck that up, it's like there's certain things I can't undo there.
It like tints the surface pretty aggressively sometimes, especially on lighter colors.
Yeah, and you can't remove all of that either.
Yeah.
Like, once it's in there, this guy is, even if I painted every other step the exact same, this guy is going to look different than the other 9.
So you're able to remove the rust color without it influencing the surface at all? You're able to do 100% subtraction when you wanted to? Is that what you're saying?
Like there's this whole back of that shoulder pad right there. It was basically the whole back half. I had put the whole stuff on, and I removed it entirely off some, and I did some streaking and fading off the rest of the back. But as long as you like rinse your brush, dampen it, and then pull it off, and repeat that step with the clean brush, you can keep pulling it off.
Okay.
Or you can streak it down, or you can maneuver it. I would take some and I'd like grab it and pull it down into the crack more, and so there would be run that line of rust color along the crack further,
Right. So
instead
like
of it being up higher
with that greasy stuff, and then
Yeah,
it
and then
spread out more.
and then it feathers it out more because more water is then added as it goes down that line. There's some nuance to it that it's not like it's not a hammer that it just hits. There's some fiddling with it, but it was it's pretty quick to work with. So, and I also made the mistake of calling this gun he's using a Melta instead of a Flamer.
It's very clearly not a Melta.
Yeah,
Come
so
on, bro.
to all the people that made that comment that I called it the wrong thing, because I know a Melta is a thing in Warhammer, and assumed that this gun that's a flamethrower, that's what a Melta was a grave mistake on my part. Did you paint anything?
I painted nothing. I went to New York City, and then I came back, and it was Friday, and I answered a bunch of emails, and then it was a weekend, and then I didn't do any hopping on the weekend because I played in the U.S. Nationals and then chilled on Sunday, and now we're here. It's Monday. We're recording a podcast.
Yeah, that happens some weeks.
So I didn't get a chance to paint anything, but while I was playing, I read half of my my third book on game design here called Board Game Design Advice, and I didn't know how this book was formatted. I just bought it. It was recommended by someone who I really look up to about board game design. And the way this is formatted is it's the same 10 or 8 questions asked to all of like the lead designers in the industry. So like
Interesting.
the guy who made Pandemic and Pandemic Legacy is answering these questions, and like other huge names in the industry. And Jamie Stegmaier, who makes all the Stonemaier games, he answered the questions too. And so reading all of their responses back to back, you can start to see a lot of commonalities in the answers, which is great. But it makes me feel like the more I read, the less I get out of it. So this is really good. It's like if you have a specific question about like the design process and you want to see a bunch of like really accoladed people and their answer to it, this is an amazing resource. And I think he even says it in the beginning. The author, Gabe Barrett, I think he says it's not necessarily designed to be like read front to back, but it's more like when you have a question, come here and look at the answers. But I'm reading it back to back. I don't really mind. It's a fast read. There's a lot of great advice, and I wanted to share some things that I learned from it that I really appreciated. There was one answer that said, always think about how your game's depth can be reached faster. So it's like you don't want to like hide the intricacy of your game from your player to discover. Some of that is unavoidable, but the faster you can get your player into that pocket, the faster they can really start to munch on that mental puzzle that is your game.
Right.
So that was cool advice.
Oh, but and then if it takes too long to get there, how many people are you going to lose before they really can fully experience what your game is?
Exactly. Yeah. And oftentimes getting to that thing is where the feeling and emotion of the game comes from. It's like what you designed the player to experience. And so if they never get there, they never get to really experience what you designed. So that was kind of an interesting thing. Another one was art is a conversation between the artist and the user. What is this word? Pandering to any intermediary diminishes the value of the work. And I was just like, wow, that's true for so many fucking things. Like even videos. Any kind of pandering to anything other than the viewer takes away from the viewer's experience, whether that be like ads, whether that be a sponsorship that dictates the content in any way. It's like any outside force that's going to influence your game is going to muddy those waters. So trying to limit that as much as possible so your vision comes through as clear as possible is a thing to think about, at least.
It's like the obvious product placement in movies when they just keep doing the close-up on the Ford logo on the truck every time it comes into frame. Or they're obviously drinking from a can of Coke in every scene.
And it kills that suspension of disbelief. And so if you take people out of that suspension, then they're like, oh, I'm watching a movie now. This is no longer immersed in it. But yeah, there's that works for so many different walks of life.
I'm so thirsty for a refreshing cola drink at this very moment. I don't know why.
Yeah, they play that sound effect right before the movie starts, like that, like, and it's like the ice cube and like the fizz. Yeah.
Now I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, they play it right before the movie starts every single time at AMC theaters. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm doing instead of painting, I did some looking into the board game design. I've been writing rules down for my game as well that I haven't really been sharing around a ton because I just want to keep them a secret until I make the video. And then I've been also doing a lot of 3D printing stuff. So I've been finding other resins that are supposed to be like the perfect wargaming 3D printing resin. That's like the right level of flexibility, the right level of cost, the right level of detail retention, ease of use. So I've bought a couple, and I'm going to do some comparisons here so I can have like a resin that I like for printing display models, which I've already discovered, and a resin that I like for doing wargaming models. And maybe I'll discover that the wargaming resin is just as good as the display model resin, and there's no fucking point to keep using it.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to some of those tests. I picked up Amerilab's TGM7, which is insanely expensive. I picked up Sunlu, which is a much more price-performant one people recommend. I picked up one from Soraya Tech called Fast Gray. People like the fast ones from Soraya Tech. I'll be doing some comparisons.
I like those. Oh, I had one. I had a link open. Did you get one from... fuck is this company? Rezione?
Rezione is my display model one, yeah. So I have...
they have one that's... I saw that they had different ones.
Oh, do they? Okay, I didn't really look into their lineup at all. I have the M70 Precision one, the salmon orange one.
Yes, M70. That was the one that I looked at for there, but they also have like a
gray one or
a gray tough ABS-like 3D printing resin, they call it. They have long-lasting tough resin, medium gray.
Honestly, Frozen and Elegoo's standard offerings aren't too bad. They're kind of flexible, so like those are even in the running as well. I have those by default though because they come with the printers that I have.
Yeah, the one that I use now is the Frozen 8K Aqua.
Yeah, and that one people talk about that is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean in terms of like detail quality and crispness, it's good.
Yeah,
it is fairly rigid though.
Is it?
Small pieces will snap pretty easily.
Okay,
I'll say that because my poor bunny's sword was made from that. And snapped right off. Well, I did drop it from a height of 2 feet onto the table, probably directly onto that small bit. But yeah, although I've had some other big or fiddly little, actually like dragon whiskers from a different same manufacturer, Cobra Mode Miniatures. They have this awesome like Asian dragon, and it has whiskers that are like as thin around as like a clicky pencil lead, and they wisp and move, and those have a nice bend to them, and I have not snapped those. So maybe that resin does fine. I don't know.
Maybe if there's like less of it, then it's more flexible. The more it builds up, the more stiff it becomes.
Yeah,
something like that.
But yeah, I've liked that stuff. But yeah, I'm really interested to hear that because that means that someone else is doing the work instead of me.
All right, on to the main topic for today. We're talking about how a lot of people in the hobby, and maybe even in other hobbies, view a lot of rules, both unwritten and literally written rules, as sacrosanct, which is a fun word that I had to look up.
What does sacrosanct mean?
Sacrosanct means it's so important that it cannot be changed. And it's usually in regards to policies, either religious or government related.
Okay, so without this, it ceases to
be what it is. Yeah, it finds its identity in these rules.
Okay.
And so where this question came from was, I got a comment on my Age of Sigmar video, and someone was like, I'm confused. If you don't like the double turn rule, why don't you just play without it? And I was like, that's a great question, and I think that is something that we can explore more. Because I feel a certain degree of commitment to playing the latest and greatest General Handbook version of the game. And I'm like, why is that? Why do people like to do that? Why do people, when they see other people breaking the rules, maybe get a little bit of distaste in their mouth for it? Why do people feel the need to commit to box art painting schemes? Why do people feel the need to commit to models for a specific game? Why don't we see more people buying proxies or using whatever models they want? Why are people committed to using the bits in the box? There's a lot of reasons of just convenience why people do that, but other people feel a certain responsibility to a company to use the things that company makes for the game. And aside from convenience, I'm curious why that is. And I have some answers. Maybe I'll get us started here.
Okay.
When it comes to games, my theory is that everyone wants to be able to talk about a shared experience, right? And so if I'm going to play a game in Age of Sigmar, I want to talk about that game with other people. And then if I go into a Discord server, a Facebook group, a forum, and I'm like, hey, I played my Soul Blight against Cities of Sigmar, and I struggle with this, this, and this. And it's like, if they're playing the double turn and I'm not playing double turn, if I'm playing 2 seasons ago, it's we can't have a great conversation about our shared experience because we're not playing the same game, literally.
Yeah.
And so maybe there's a little bit of that in it, wanting to belong to the larger audience outside of your friends.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's where my brain initially goes, is that you don't want to have to give 5 extra data points before someone can give you their thoughts or their opinion or their reasoning why. You don't want to say, okay, we were using this rule, not this rule but changed this way. We don't do double turn, we blah, 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 blah. And the more that those variables are in there, kind of the less likely you can actually get help because you're narrowing the experience of who's had that same experience.
Exactly. Not everyone's going to have that same experience.
Yeah. And also, in regards to just playing a game, you want to go to the game store and meet up with somebody, or you go to a tournament and you play there, or you're just going to Warhammer Night every Thursday in your local store. Wouldn't it just be nice where we know the game we're playing? We don't have to agree to anything. We don't have to compromise at anything. We don't have to lobby for using this and not this and changing this and not this because it may benefit your army, it may hurt my army, it may whatever it is. They are what they are. The rules are what they are, and they may not be perfect because that's typically how games work. There's really no such thing for most games other than chess, right? Where it's just the rules are evolving to try to constantly accommodate with the new variables that are brought into the game to create some level of balance. And that perfect equilibrium never happens, but if we aren't all playing with the same set of rules on a regular basis, we can't all be part of the conversation of what needs to change to make that balance.
Let me pose a hypothetical question to you. So let's say Guild Ball was a game that was still alive and still currently developed. you don't care a ton about Guild Ball. It's like a game that you're mildly interested in. You play because I kind of force you to do it, right?
Yeah, I liked the game.
I know you do. I know. Yeah. I'm not trying to say you don't. Well, it's a certain you have a certain relationship with that game that's different than other games.
Yeah.
So if we played together, and I was like, hey, there's this rule, it's trash. We're gonna do something different. That's not official. Would any part of you be like, I don't like that. Like I want to play the thing, or would you be like, whatever, I don't care?
I would be like, whatever, I don't care.
Okay.
But that's because I don't have a big Guild Ball community at home. And I am not worried about getting practice with that rule. So when I go play with somebody new, I'll know how the rule works. It's like, I just want to sit down and us play a game and have fun. And if you're telling me that this rule takes away from the fun or balance of the game we could play, that's more important to me.
Okay.
If it's a game of Age of Sigmar, when I know if I'm going to go play in a tournament or go and start my own escalation league or whatever, it's like, well, I kind of want to have experience with all those things so I can maybe make my own judgment, or I can feel like I know the way the rules are, so when I play with a random person that we will play with that rule. So kind of, you're right in that how much investment I have in the game, how much depth I want to get into will determine maybe how I feel about that.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of people in the hobby think about potential tournament opportunities but actually never play in tournaments?
Yeah, it's the same thing as how many people buy Warhammer but don't paint Warhammer or don't play Warhammer.
It's like wishful thinking kind of.
Yeah, you have best of intentions. It's not like purposely I go into the store, I buy 2 boxes of Space Marines, and 10 years from now I look back and I never played a game with those Space Marines. You didn't buy them with that in mind. You bought them with best of intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like if I'm going to play a game, I should learn the rules as they are written for this current edition so I have the best understanding of those rules, kind of a thing, rather than just playing for what's fun. And maybe that's not the right approach to it.
Yeah.
So also sometimes you need to get a certain level of experience of all the rules to make your own opinion on what you think is good or not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So if you had a group of, if you were playing an escalation league of Age of Sigmar, and let's say for a fact you're not going to play in tournaments and that you are playing it for fun, would you bring up a rule change that you wanted to make to the game to ask other people if they agreed with that rule change and then implement it for your escalation league, or would you not even go through the trouble of doing that?
I would do that. We would be very careful about timing. You'd want to do that before the league started so everyone felt like they understood what they were getting into.
Yeah.
Making changes mid-season is never a good thing.
Yeah.
All it takes is one person to feel like they got bamboozled out of what they thought they were signing up for.
Right.
To really make that a really bad experience for them as a whole. We just want everyone to be on the same field. I like that too because something like an escalation league, or I've played in campaign leagues before with Age of Sigmar, where it's this silly narrative campaign rule, like story thing that's happening that I couldn't roll my eyes hard enough at, but that's what certain people really liked, and I'm all for doing that as long as I got to smash some people. It's kind of a self-contained thing, right? And we had rules in there where it's like you'd go and collect territories and you could use like a overworld action to like try to find a relic. And my buddy with his Lord Croak got a relic that allowed him once a battle to guarantee a spell that went off. And I'm like, that's fucking fair on Lord Croak. But that was it. Like we knew we were getting into something that wasn't just strictly by here's the rules, here's the artifacts, here's how you're planning your list out beforehand. And so when you go into that, you know that maybe you don't know exactly what the items are, but you knew that there's some things that aren't going to go exactly how a match play game would go.
Yeah.
And that is okay because you set your mindset to it. I think people's general default is to like, unless I know I'm volunteering into something and why I'm doing that, if I'm just playing a game, in an ideal world, the rules would be a great version of the game,
Yeah.
I have a weird thing that just came up to my mind because it is the time of the year, and I'm a nerd that plays fantasy football, so I'm a different kind of nerd.
Okay.
I've played fantasy football for like 20 years. I've been in this current dynasty league of fantasy for about 15 years. And in fantasy football, there's a ton of different rules options. So there can be rules on how many points your quarterback gets when they throw a touchdown pass. Could be 4 points, could be 6 points. You can play in a league where you can start 2 quarterbacks or only 1. You can play in a league where for every reception that a receiver or running back or tight end gets, they get no points, or they get a half a point, or they get 1 point. You can play in a league where you don't play a kicker. You can play a league where you do play a defense. You can play. There's all these different variables, but they're still the same. They're still fantasy football. At the end of the day, if I tell you I play fantasy football and you play fantasy football, we will have a common language.
Interesting.
And within 30 seconds of you explaining to me your roster, and then you tell me I'm in 1 point PPR, single QB, single flex, I will know exactly what you're talking about. Because there are those variables, but they're minor when the vast majority is a universal language we understand.
Okay.
And those small variables equate the math in my head slightly differently, but I still understand. We can still have the conversation. We still know how the game is played. And even so far as stats, data, how experts give rankings and all these things, they can, on these websites, many of which you pay for, subscriptions for, to get the experts' analysis and breakdown and stuff. They have the breakdown at the top of the thing to put in your rules of how your scoring works in your league, and that will fluctuate how they rank certain players or trajectories for the year, or who you should play, this guy over this guy this week, all those things. But at the end of the day, having those variables does not diminish what the game is and the fun that it is. I had never really thought about fantasy football and miniature war games until today, but I think there's something to be learned there about you can offer within your game system some tweaks that might be polarizing, some options that certain people will agree or disagree with, but 95% of your game is universal. That 5% of customization, people may like having that flexibility and feeling like they're still playing within the rules like you're talking about of the latest edition of the rules, but flexibility for what I think is the more superior version or the more fun version of the game that you and I sit down and play.
Yeah. It's like, so if I had to equate that to a war game, it'd be like if in AOS, the GHBs, if they didn't change the points of units and they just added the fun flavor of like, here's a spell that your 5 wound non-mounted characters can use. Here are some items they can use. It's like the various ways the seasons change the game. Like you could just play a different season. This is, again, notwithstanding like the changes to points and stuff for units. It's kind of what it makes me feel like. Okay, that's interesting. It's interesting how you can have a shared experience but still be playing different rule sets in Fantasy Flight, and how that doesn't really, it seems like it equates to wargaming at all. Another thing is, like, we played in a tournament this weekend at U.S. Nationals, and there is a very clearly overpowered unit in the current version of the game. Everyone there would be like, this is bad for the game. I would say like 90% across the board of all players there and online would agree. But like, if you house rule that tournament, it suddenly nullifies the results of the tournament in a weird way. And it's like we all agree and we all know this was a mistake or a broken thing, but we're all playing it anyways and dealing with it.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, yeah, and it's an arms race, because if I don't play it and somebody else plays it and it's broken, I'm just like, well, am I just going to put myself behind the 8 ball before we even roll the first dice because I'm making a moral judgment that this shouldn't be done? No, you're not going to do that. It should be the onus of the manufacturer or the rules people to be agile,
quick changes
in those things. And it also gets really weird when those changes affect people having spent money and time to purchase paint, list build, all those things for this, and then if you always feel like you're getting the rug pulled out from under you, and this is where I have some empathy for the people trying to balance their games, when you've had to spend real money on your physical toys to do that there's a lot of feels bad moments. You don't want to have those feels bad moments in your game. So how do you balance that? That's tough.
That's one thing I didn't really think about is like the level of investment of the miniature hobby. I don't know why I don't think about that a ton. Maybe it's because I'm fortunate in my job and I get a lot of miniatures for free, and so I'm not paying for a lot of them. So that's a possibility. Okay. So another angle I want to take on this question is monetary investment. So it's like, I don't know if this is a thing. Maybe you can tell me because of your deep anthropological knowledge. When people invest in a company with their dollars, their opinion about how that company moves is biased. It's like they're going to see what that company does and puts out as more valuable or more important, even if slightly, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like their rule sets, their models, their determination of how their game should be played is right because it's their game. And also because I feel like I've invested money in this. And so like my ego is on the line in some small way. I don't want to invest in a product that's not good. Like I don't want to admit that the double turn is a trash rule because I've put money into this. Look, I'm just fucking with you guys. But like, is that monetary investment at all biasing our opinions about model ranges, about color schemes, about rule sets? Is that a thing that you think is happening?
Oh, well, this goes back to...
Oh, here we go. Class is in session, y'all.
This goes back to humans' tribal nature.
Yeah.
So us as a species, since our origin, we're tribal. And you can still see it in primates today, that they're very tribal. That it is an us and them mentality.
You can see it in normal fucking humans.
Yeah, it's the reason why politics are the way they are.
Yeah.
It's the reason why they keep it a two-party system, so then we can always have an enemy. And if you consider yourself a part of the group, and there's different ways to invest to then hit that threshold of investment to where you now consider yourself a part of that group, then you defend that group.
Yes.
Now, you also feeling you are a part of the group, and once you feel like you are accepted or that you deserve your place in the group, you often can also be the most critical of that group because you feel I have earned the right to be critical, which is why the people that are most strong advocates for a game are the people that are most invested in the game. That often will go part and parcel.
Time or money, right?
Yes. Yep. And just like that just trash on they think an army's overpowered or trash on this rule or trash on this change from the season to last or this, that, or the other because they're the most invested. But when you are invested, you want that thing to thrive. Whether it's your Neanderthal group of people and there's another one 3 caves over, you want yours to survive. Even if that means that, like, something bad could happen and I might not die, but I'm now then on the outs, or I'm now alone, or I now don't have backup when I'm sleeping that someone else is now watching for saber-toothed tigers. So you need your tribe to survive. And in order to do that, it's easiest to put down others or downplay others or say that, this is so much better, and then I'm invested because I got like $1,000 into this game. This game needs to work. This game needs to continue to grow. This game needs to have more players so I can justify my $1,000 spent by being able to go to the game store and find other people to play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that. There's the positive and negative side of it, but that investment, however you want to quantify investment, is absolutely a bias that we have in games.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I know there's a big difference between board games and war games, but board games feel so much more interchangeable. Like you're willing to play several board games in a night versus, being committed to one miniature war game for 6 months of the year. And it's because of that level of investment, the assembly, the painting, the list writing, the planning out even an evening to play the game that's several hours long. There's a lot going on, and people feel real committed to the games they choose for forever. I think we've mentioned that before in the past, where it's like people see war games as a lifetime commitment. Like, this is my faction that I am playing. I'm going to play them forever. And I think it really bent out of shape when like rules change, when factions get retconned and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point in the difference between miniature war games as opposed to board games and even role-playing games. I think to me, there's probably a lot more depth into this, but to me, the major factors are what it was required of me to be able to get my full experience out of this game. So if I'm going to play Kingdom Death, I need 0 to 3 friends. I do not need a thriving community and locally a tournament that can give me 16, 24, 48 players in order for me to really have a great, full, well-rounded experience with Kingdom Death or Frosthaven or Pandemic or whatever, or Dungeons and Dragons. I need a small group of friends that we all have come to our consensus of the kind of game we want to play, what we have fun with, what makes us coming back to the game. I don't need everyone down at the game store to want to play Dungeons and Dragons and to play it the way I want to play it.
Yeah.
You need that in a war game.
Do you need that?
I think you do. I mean, there are people that sit and play the same 1 or 2 people with Warhammer in their basement for over a decade. And those people are serial killers. I don't know how. I have no idea how someone could play 40K for years and years and years and only play against Todd. I think that's fucking weird. Because it's like playing Magic the Gathering with the same dude every week. You are scratching the surface of what the game's potential is, of different kinds of opponents, of different play styles, of different armies, of the style in which they play. Are they more aggressive? Are they more tentative? Do they like to sit and wait things out? Do they try to ram it down your throat? And the personality of your opponent, as well as the social experience you have with them, it's part of what these 1v1 games, what makes them so unique and so fun. And so you want to have a good garden of people, right? And you can just go out to the garden and just pick out this tomato and then go back to the garden and get that carrot. And they're just different. And that's part of the fun. And I don't need that in D&D, but I feel like even if I don't...
mean, you do need it. So here, do a fairer comparison. What if, you said you played D&D with, 4 to 6 people, right? What if you had a group of 6 people playing Age of Sigmar and that's who you played with? Every once in a while, maybe you got a new faction, you played against that. Would that be good enough?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. And then it's like I can get my extra variety on top of that if I go to a local tournament a big tournament. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think honestly for bigger cities, like that's not really an issue. But if you're talking about games that aren't Warhammer in one of its capacities, aren't Age of Sigmar, and aren't 40K, even other Warhammer games. Just take those 2 big ones out of the equation.
Aeronauticalist or whatever the fuck the plain one is.
Even large metro areas. Tell me any other war game where you're not nervous of whether or not you're going to get 6 to 10 people in your area that will play at a regular basis. It's legit worry. So and not to mention if you're in any kind of a smaller area where it's like, if I'm going to play with anybody, I either have to get all my friends into it and then make them stay with it, or I got to hope that there's some level of organic growth and, people that want to play. Okay. I think that's a big part of it, is just the fear of the investment in that others will also invest, so I will be able to do the thing that's kind of out of my control.
Okay. So to back up a little bit and answer the larger question here, you're saying because the experience we are looking to have is already wildly niche, expensive, and requires insane investment of time, why make it that much more niche by changing the rules and having homebrew stuff just to like narrow the pool even more? That's kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I don't think there's any harm in doing that. I don't think there's any harm in doing that whenever the hell you want. But I think most specifically, there's no harm in that when you feel a level of security of being able to just play the game with whomever, get enough experience, and then I can tinker and test with my buddy Todd that we can usually meet on Sundays. And hey, what if we just didn't do these secondary objectives? What if we were just like, fuck that, that's whatever. For whatever reason, I think it's dumb. I think it takes too much time. I think they change all the time. We can never remember which one is. We forget the rules half the time anyway. Just go with the flow on that. But
yeah, when you say that, I feel the feeling in me where it's like I'm not getting my reps in. I feel that feeling, and so it's just it's like where does that come from? So yeah, that is interesting.
It's like you play a game of Dota where there was no creep waves, and you're just like,
no, yeah, custom games.
What?
I don't play custom games at all. Yeah,
I mean you could do that, but it's like that's okay. But it's like, oh, if I ever want to be the best Dota player, I'm wasting an entire game right now where I'm not working on the things that are reality to the way the game is meant to be played.
Is this a spike thing?
Yeah, it probably is.
Is it? Okay, because I would love to see some kind of data that someone would collect on this, because like I really have this problem where I view the world through my own point of view, and it's just like I think everyone thinks the same as me,
Yeah.
and it's like that's not how this works. And so I'm trying to figure out like other people that do play games, like how do they think about this, and it's like how do they justify what they're doing. It's like if playing a war game is about having fun, and you are actively playing a rule set that has something that's causing you emotional stress or pain or unenjoyment, it's like why are you doing it? It's so counterintuitive. I don't get it. But then at the same time, I'm right there. I'm like, I want to get a rep in on the current version so I can be part of this larger experience talking about the game as well, as opposed to just experiencing it, which is weird. I don't talk about my sick round of Scythe, or of fucking Yahtzee, Dice Throne, whatever, to anyone else. Like, no one really hears about it. When I end a board game, that experience is pretty much done unless something insane happened. But with war games, like, you want to talk about them. You want to keep talking about them. And so it's interesting to think about that.
Yeah, I am every time I go to a convention and I walk around and I just kind of overhear and I snoop on people's conversations or watch them play games, the big tournaments. Did it again at Nova Open. I am reminded how far away my brain of what competitive Warhammer looks like and what it actually looks like actually are.
Yeah.
There's very few games, or there's very few tables at a given high-level even tournament where people are playing the game with such a level of intensity and seriousness that in my brain, I think they are.
I know. You're totally right. And I had the same experience playing at the tournament this last weekend. It's like there are very good lists in that game, and people aren't running them. Like, they're running weird commanders and weird lists, and the opponents that I had were super fucking chill, and they were so nice, and like there were even times where they messed up the rules or I messed up the rules, and we let each other just kind of like
takesies backsies.
Yeah, as long as it wasn't like 3 turns ago or like it affected the game state. If it was an obvious thing, like, oh, I forgot a vulnerability token, like, can I put that on there? And they're like, yeah, sure, totally. Yeah. So like people were doing that, and I was just like, oh my god, like this is so much chiller than I thought, it was advertised to be.
Yeah, yeah. There's the same thing in like in Magic, which is where a lot of my like real try-hard gaming side comes from. At high-level tournaments, people will, if there is a trigger, so like someone plays a card and that causes another card to do a thing, this, that, or the other, that a trigger happens, it is on the person whose trigger it is to identify it and resolve it. And if we go to the next phase, basically that opportunity is passed. In high-level Magic, you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like you forgot it. That was on you. Yeah. Also, if you don't remind your opponent, if it's your trigger, you remind them to do that, then like say, oh, you drew a card, you lose 2 life. If I don't do that every time you draw a card, you don't lose the life.
Yeah.
And so that is high level Magic. That said, in many Magic tournaments that I've gone to, we just do takesies backsies all the time.
Yeah.
And there are people that will not do that for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then usually that just makes me fucking turn my hat around backwards.
Yeah.
Be like, I'm gonna kick your teeth in now, buddy.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Like that's
part of the experience.
Those are part of the experience. But I think the difference between a game like Magic and a game like Song of Ice and Fire or Age of Sigmar or Guild Ball is that there's more of like this like unwritten contract that you have that we're doing a shared experience that is larger than I play a card, it says what it does, then you play your card, it says what it does. There's just more interaction. There's more moving pieces literally, that it feels like the environment or the community around Warhammer games or war games in general is a little bit more warm.
I think you're right. I think because the first game I played against a guy who was clearly better than me, he also had some hot fucking dice, like at least in one turn. He felt bad for like how much he was like crushing me. And he was like, "Where are you from?" And I was like, "I'm. This is my backyard. Like I can drive here in 2 minutes." And he was like, "Oh, I don't feel bad anymore that that I'm crushing you and like wasting like if he had, like he was from Boston, so he flew from Boston to fucking Minnesota. So yeah, so it's like there is some responsibility you have as a player to kind of not unsure, but care about how your opponent is experiencing the game.
Yeah.
Because if they're fucking having a terrible time, it impacts your experience in a big way. And so that was interesting to see at a tournament as well. That guy was even thinking about how I was feeling. I didn't fucking care. But it was cool to see he even thought about it.
Yeah, there are ways that that social interaction that can make or break the experience for both of you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because if I'm crushing you, which is entirely likely, I want you, because if you feel like shit that I'm crushing you, and I'm not a sociopath, I also then feel like shit that I'm crushing you.
Yeah.
So how do we work together to make light of it, to like ham it up and be like, well, you look at, you have 4 more 6s. Of course you got 4 more 6s. But like this, just like, let's laugh at the irony or the hilarity of the situation and go through it together instead of making the villain the guy that keeps rolling 6s.
Yeah.
That requires a level of understanding of communication to work that together. And people that have played the games longer and maybe even know you or are just good at dealing with people can do that. Not everyone can do that, and that's tough.
Social skill, yeah.
Yeah, and you can find yourself in that situation whether you are geared for it, whether you have the skills for it or not.
I've definitely played against gamers who have very little social awareness, and like either you're crushing them or they're crushing you, and like they are wearing their emotions on their sleeve, and it's tanking the experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an interesting conversation, a little bit off topic, but it might be cool to talk about that at length in a different episode. But one thing I also want to talk about was models. More and more I get into this hobby, the more I feel like every game is a model agnostic game. And we shared this thought at least one other time on the podcast. But I'm curious if you feel that way. Like, obviously, GW makes great models, so it's very easy to play a GW game and just use their minis. Like, that's because they're great. They're amazing quality. They assemble nicely. The experience is fantastic. What if you're playing another game, like a Black Site Studios game, and you wanted to find better models for your faction? Would you feel comfortable doing that, or would you feel a certain amount of responsibility or ease of use just to use the range that makes the game?
That's a good question. I think if you come at this from a person that's new to the genre or new to a game, new to miniatures, I don't think you even think about that yet
as an option.
Yeah. You think about, oh, I'm going to play Warhammer. I think I'm going to play the Space Marines, and so I'll buy the Space Marines. And at a certain point, your eyes are opened, whether it's a local person at the shop that's got these sweet, crazy other models, or they got these wild extra bits on them, or whatever. Your eyes are open to it. So I think you initially have started very narrow focused, and that's what companies like Games Workshop want you to do, because that's how you can make sure that you get their money.
Yeah, they stay in. Yeah. Keep investing.
I think it's such a wonderful layer of depth to the games we play that'll allow us to never really get bored.
Yeah.
I'm never going to get bored with models. I'm never going to get bored with options of how my take on something would be, or how I want to make it unique to me, and whether that's through paint, whether that's through basing, whether that's through kit bashing, whether that's alternative models, whether that's 3D printing, whether that's 3D designing my own model. Like, there's so many things, and we don't have to do them. The fear is if you feel resistance of people not happy that you choose to do that, which is, I think that's one of those things that it feels more like a boogeyman than it is a reality that people are that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's a wives' tale that there's people that just hate that you do that and they won't play with you, or you can't play this in official Warhammer tournaments.
Right.
Newsflash, that isn't a fucking thing. Like, the only official Warhammer tournaments are as if you go to Warhammer World or your official Warhammer store does a tournament. You know how many fucking people fit in the Warhammer store? Like 6.
A solid 5, yeah.
Like, don't stress out about that. Literally nowhere.
Yeah.
Nova, Adepticon, LVO.
Where the biggest tournaments are.
Atlantic City Open. The biggest ones. They could give 0 fucks. As long as it's obvious what the unit is, it's clear to your opponent, and it appears that you put in the effort to make that thing look and act like you want it to be. and your opponents won't give a shit as long as they're not confused. Which are the fucking dudes with bows and which are the dudes with swords? So they're not accidentally running into the dudes with swords, and they meant to run into the dudes with bows. Like that's it, you know.
That's where the problem comes in. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I don't know. I think you're right in that. You're right in saying that that's not a natural inclination for a beginner in the hobby. And obviously it also comes down to the game and how the game presents itself to the larger audience. If you are making a game like, not Frosthaven, but the game that's like Frostgrave. And that game is designed, it does have models, but it also advertises itself as a model agnostic game. You're playing Space Station Zero, for instance.
Sure.
So that game is going to attract an audience of people who know how to find models, who have access to 3D designs to print, a large catalog of unpainted minis to use, and stuff like that. And whereas like at Games Workshop or Conquest, they have the thing that's going to attract that kind of person. So maybe that's what it is too. You are kind of like leading the witness in that the audience you have here came to your game because you did have the options and it was easy for them to figure things out.
And those options on the front of the cover of the boxes look fucking sweet.
It's fucking sweet.
Yeah, and that is no downplay on companies that make their own amazing models. In fact, you could seriously make the argument that companies who make games, I'm looking at you, Snarling Badger, that don't have their own models, that excite people to buy the models, are narrowing the gap of people that are willing to try your game
100%.
because they feel like they have to know all this other information, and it's not easily accessible to them. That's not to say that that's not a smart way to go about gaming. In fact, it allows those guys to focus on making the cool game and not around monetizing it the best they can and coming up with the best sculpts and hiring sculptors and all that kind of crazy thing that goes along with it. It gets real complicated real quick.
Yeah, they're doing that intentionally.
Yeah. But there's pros and cons to each.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's better for our hobby, for bringing in new blood and getting people excited about our hobby, that there are awesome models on the shelf that I can buy a box because those looked really, really cool to me. And then I figure out what is the game that these go with.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It goes even further than that. Like when it comes to comparing GW and Song, for instance, Song sells their boxes of models with fully assembled minis on bases with their cards, with a movement template in the box, ready to go. You buy a mini, you put it on the table to play that night. And because of that ease of use, it attracts a certain kind of buyer. You see next to zero conversions in A Song of Ice and Fire. And I think the reason is because not only are the fully assembled models harder to convert, but it attracts a certain kind of audience that is looking just to play the game. Tournaments don't require armies to be fully painted. They're not attracting hobbyists first. They're attracting maybe gamers first. Whereas with GW tournaments, you do see more conversions, you do see more proxies, you do see more third-party bits, you see fully painted armies because it is a requirement. So it's like they have different things that they value, the two games and two communities.
Yeah. I mean, what are you gonna do? Change out this white dude's arm with another white dude's arm?
I mean, Dan Malston converts, and he does things like he puts like spikes down in the movement trays. He'll put like emblems on shields. He'll like cut off swords and give different swords to make them more different. Because each box of Song minis that comes with 12 dudes has 4 varieties of 3 identical minis.
Okay,
so he likes to change them up a little bit.
I think that's pretty fucking sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's probably using hard plastic for the new swords, so they're not bendy swords.
Yep.
Yes. Danimals understands.
Danimals understandables.
Yeah, it is very understandables. I do think that there is the commitment to the hobby side that I do commend Games Workshop for over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously to their own benefit, right?
Sure.
Because you can buy 1 book or 2 books and play the game, but you can keep buying models and keep buying models and keep buying models. As much as they bring out a new edition and a new edition of the book, that is a much slower drip of income as opposed to having cool new models all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're associating the hobby side so strongly with the foundation of what their games are and their business is, that you get people, whether they were considered themselves artsy or considered themselves people that like to do arts and crafts or whatever, they like, it's so weird. The people that I would not think of, the kinds of people that had this crazy idea and these crazy kit bashes and stuff, and I see them running these armies at tournaments and stuff, I'm like, man, you have a lot of creativity. You really thought that up, and people are really proud of that. There's a level of kind of displaying your uniqueness and your own take, your own what makes you unique at the table is really, really awesome. And so I think any of these kind of polarizing opinions that I do believe are mostly wives' tales. There aren't really very many people out there that really care about you using third-party bits or you using a creature caster demon instead of the Lord of Change demon. Those people don't really exist. It's a way, the internet makes us fearful, right? We gotta make sure I gotta keep this card between the lines, just like I gotta keep the card between the lines on the current edition of the rules, so people won't get mad, or I won't be able to find a game, or I'll get blacklisted from our local Games Workshop store and that kind of shit.
So here's another question for you. After saying that, then, do you think that the people that are biblically committed to rule sets, do you think that's a wives' tale, or do you think that's more often occurring than people who have a distaste for third-party bits in their games, or do you think they're the same?
I think it's much more common, and I also think it's because it's kind of the unwritten understanding. If I say, hey, you want to go play AOS tonight, both of our perceptions are latest edition, latest points, latest rules, latest everything. And unless we plan ahead and come to an agreement prior, when someone says we want to sit down and play a game, Age of Sigmar game, and I'm not even rolling for the double turn on the top of 2, and you're like, what? You got to roll. I'm like, no, I'm not playing that. Like that's just kind of like I don't know if it's just like a customary, these are the rules, that's what we're playing, unless we discuss it prior. I don't know. I think people would be hesitant, kind of like how we'd feel, be hesitant to be like, oh, I don't know if that variation is worth my 3 hours of time. I think that the time investment is the scary thing with me too. It's like, but we're playing a version that I don't really know if I'd made the right choices, or I approached the game the right way, or I learned something more about my army to take on to my next game. If we added these other wacky-do rule things that are not the way it's usually played. So I could see the hesitation for most players with that.
I think you're right too. I think there are some people out there, and like minorities tend to be, they are incredibly vocal, that have a distaste for third-party bits. And I get comments about it, so I know the person exists, but how often does that person shower and touch grass? I have no idea. They could be never entering a game store for all I know, because I've never experienced anyone in an actual game store having any issue with a scheme of mine, a conversion of mine, a proxy of mine. That's never been a thing I've experienced, but I have experienced people being very devout to rule sets. So you know how I mentioned earlier how I often see the world through my own lens, and I think everyone thinks the same way as me. So I was trying to figure out, I'm like, why do people like the double turn? It's like, oh, it's because they're financially invested in this game and they can't be wrong about liking it. That's why. So I've solved the mental problem in my head, and now I'm fine. Now my opinion is right. Now
you came to your own consensus.
Yeah, exactly.
I will also say, in my years of experience in game stores, that I've never seen or ever heard whisper of a player that was banned from a store because of what models they brought to a game or what rule set they brought to a game. On the other hand, I have more people than I can count that I know of that have been banned for life or banned for X number of months or years from game stores because how they acted.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of more important.
That's the lesson here, yeah.
Don't be a jackass to a fellow nerd that just wants to play a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. There has been, I have had 2 times in my life where I thought a dude was going to get his ass kicked because he wouldn't leave when the store owner thought he
really.
Both times with Magic, but
really, okay.
Oh yeah. Some people are just, they're made from work from home. So let's just say that.
And do not play nicely with the other human beings.
No. So
well, that's all I had to say about this topic. You have anything else you want to share?
It's really interesting. I thought that we covered it. We just solved all the world's problems, really.
We did.
I think it's interesting to look at. This is kind of a approaching something from our hobby from a different angle and kind of analyzing it, asking the question of why or is it, and why is it that way or why is it not, and what are the reasons behind that. I think it's pretty One, we're fucking intellectuals.
That's really what it is.
Yeah,
Big brain.
we earned our PhDs today.
I think the last thing you mentioned is really important for all humans to really think about. Is like, is what I'm experiencing and thinking even a thing? Is it even something that is largely experienced? Am I entirely making it up? I know Jordan Peterson is not an often appreciated person, but he had a quote that I really appreciate. And it was something along the lines of, most human ideas are bad and wrong. And I'm just like, that level of humility is so valuable for everyone. It's like, because people will often have a feeling like what the thing I'm feeling and just assume that it's unanimous and that it applies to everyone. And it often is not. And often it's not even reality. So I think it's important to kind of sit down and also ask you guys the question, what do you think? What's your gaming experience with your gaming group? Are you changing rules? Are you using proxy stuff? Have you experienced people that have given you shit for different units, different ways of playing? Do you feel a certain way when you use an alternate rule set, or do you not? I really want to. We often canvass our viewers for opinions about stuff because I'm just curious what like the larger community is. It's like this is an awesome opportunity we have actually as content creators, is to get a bird's eye view of like the hobby. And it's been eye opening my entire time I've had my channel. So I always appreciate hearing it.
Yeah, and then along with picking your brains down in the comment section to answer, also I will offer a challenge to kind of switch things up at the table for your next game. Just don't use a tape measure. Just be like, nah, that was 4 inches. He can make the charge. That was 9 inches.
I'm not sure
That is 6 inches.
if I could handle that.
That is good enough. This is why all games need to be on grids.
Yeah, no kidding.
Then it's like, I trust you. I trust your 4 inches are 4 inches. Because how often times in a game you're like, okay, there's two kinds of players. When I say, my charge was 7 inches and I put it out there, I'm like, does that look like I got in? There's two kinds of players. There's the player that's like, yep, good enough. Yep, looks good to me. And they don't even bend over to look, right? Because the point is, we want to play our game, want our dudes to do their thing. Yep, good to me.
We don't want an eighth of an inch to make the difference.
And then there's the other people that are like, and they bring out their own tape measure.
I don't do that, but I do look. I do look.
Yeah,
you know?
it's okay to look.
Yeah.
If they're fucking, they're like wheeling it and dealing it, and they're like saying you're out while they're holding their tape measure up at the angle. You do it at the angle, so it's like suddenly your ear inches across, but when you hold it up like this, it looks like 10.
Yeah.
Like, there's some charcuterie boards that are going on around those kinds of games, but I think that it's just like people that are just like, sure, benefit of the doubt, we're here to play games, and the people that are not. And I would ask that if you find yourself doing that, just let people play with the toys. They'll let you play with your toys. You'll have a good time.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Good lesson for us all, and good way to wrap it all up, which puts us into the next section of this podcast, which we're doing a little bit of a different segment other than news this time. We tried out a snack review with Jon, I think 2 episodes ago.
Sounds about right, yeah.
And now this time we're going to try, so we talk about our work in progresses, which for me was nothing this time. But we also, much like you, have hobby dreams, hobby projects that are on our mind when we see new products, when we see paint jobs from other people that are like, oh, that was cool. I want to do that, but change this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this segment, I want to talk about like a hobby project that I've got inspired by because I saw a recent release and it melds well with a certain idea I have, and just kind of talk about a fun idea.
Okay.
Instead.
All right, and then I will pick apart your idea and tell you why it's dumb.
Yes. Okay, so I have a female lady that leads my...
Whoa. A female lady?
Female lady.
Okay.
A lady, not a lord, a vampire lady. That's supposed to run my whole vampire army. And right now, I have a vampire lord on Zombie Dragon, not a female. And so I was like, how do what's a good female conversion for a mounted vampire lady? And so... What? Shut the fuck up. There's so the Blood Bowl set came out, and it's got 2 female players, and she's got this very leaning forward pose.
Oh, is this the new vampire ones?
Yes, and
Okay,
one's got a
pull it up.
helmet. One's got a helmet. One doesn't have a helmet, but they have this really great forward momentum posture that I really like. And I think the helmeted version has wings on the sides of its helmet, which are amazing for my motif, which is a blood dragon one. And so I want to have my chalice guard have wings on the side of their helmets. A lot of my blood knights do. I have dragons in my army. And so I want to continue that motif of dragons. So that helmet is amazing. That forward posture is amazing, and I think that would work well on a zombie dragon. But the one issue with that model is she's got this like kerchief, this like necktie thing.
Yep.
And she's got like mad cleavage.
Yeah, she got some boobers coming out.
But it's like she has like a huge elongated neck. Doesn't it feel like there's a lot of space in between the head and the torso and stuff like that?
It's kind of hard to say because that coif thing goes all the way down to the top of the boobages.
The boobages.
So I can't. Let me zoom in, Games Workshop.
Let me zoom in. Let me zoom into these vampire titties. Enhance. So that chick, while you enhance that, is one idea. And then I think I saw someone do this for another thing. But do you know that most recent Maggotkin of Nurgle hero who's like sitting on that really dilapidated horse?
Yeah, he's the new Harbinger of Decay.
Yes. That horse could absolutely have a vampire on top of it and be like a...
Oh, yeah.
There's no mounted vampire lord on a horse on a nightmare in AOS. You could use it as like a white lord on night or as like a Castellan for your blood knights. But that horse is waiting for a fucking vampire to go on top of.
Everything about that model is fucking banging.
I know. It's so good.
Yeah, fully expect to see a good bushel of those painted for Golden Demon. Yeah, it's so good. I want to paint it so bad for a Golden Demon, but I'm not going to because I know everyone is going to.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking at boobages lady here. I think the big extra shouldery things are too much.
They're too much. They are too much. I think they also make her torso... So her breasts are pushed together so much in the center of her torso. And their torso, it seems like it's so wide. So it's like it all seems very strange. But that head... With that, what is that? You called it a coif?
Yeah.
That coif, if I could just saw that part off and maybe put it on a different torso or change the torso in some way and then put it on legs that are mounting a horse, I think that would be a great female dragon thematic lady for my army.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think even just that head alone looks great for just switching it out on one of the Blood Knight mounted riders.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think I would start with that, but then try to find something else to alter. So, okay, it was like, all right, we want this to work with that. And what I typically will do is all right, I'm starting with the head is going to be different. I chop that head off. I kind of, even if it's not physically putting together the rest of that Blood Knight model with the horse and the rider. Sometimes it's just kind of mentally, and I even pull up the picture and I take one I already own. You already have some built and painted. Just kind of physically hold that head in front. And now I ask myself, what else can I change?
Yeah. Also, that's a great point because the guy that rides on that zombie dragon is actually fucking big.
Yeah, because her like dimensions seem a bit more like robust. She's got man hands, as Jerry Seinfeld would say.
Okay, I thought you were talking about her huge tracts of land.
No, her hands, dude. Her hands could fucking crack open a lobster in one chuck.
A lobster?
Yeah, it's also from Seinfeld. Man hands.
I mean, that's not even like an impressive feat, though. It's like lobsters are like meant to be cracked open.
In the scene, the camera zooms in on her table, on her plate, because Jerry takes her out to dinner, and she takes the lobster and cracks it in half, but her hands like make the lobster look like it's the size of a shrimp because her hands are so big, and she just cracks it open in half with her just massive strength. So yeah, anyway, that's the joke.
Okay.
So are you just you just want that head so bad? The rest of this you're not feeling so much?
I don't know. The torso totally works. I thought she had clenched fists, but now I realize she doesn't have that. But replacing the hand would be incredibly easy to do.
I like the movement you get from that cape. So she could be on a horse, and that cape shows movement of the horse running.
Yes.
If you had a running pose horsey.
Yeah, I feel like her torso and the wing dingers, like in between her shoulder armor, I feel like those are too big, and I feel like her torso is too just chunky. But maybe it's the angle of the photo, and if I buy the actual thing, it won't be that bad looking.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. The cape is nice. I think it would fit great on like a dragon riding with the wind kind of like lapping. So I like that. I also like the unhelmeted female vampire as well, just for that head. And that had to be great on a blood night on any kind of vampire, honestly. It's a great generic.
Oh, that's the same model. It's just
Same model, different head. Yeah, exactly.
That is a great. There's a couple of great vampire heads in here.
Oh, there are. Yeah, I'm not talking about the
quarterback
male ones.
Dracula, dude. His head is what vampires should look like. Come on.
Yeah, dude.
Like it is horror movie vampire.
Yeah, it's Dracula.
Cool.
Even this guy who he's kind of a little part beast, part vampire.
Yeah.
Like that guy almost could be just 1-to-1 given a weapon, done. Vampire done.
Yes.
Because like his armor looks exceptionally like actual like combat armor. So that's an easy one too. This whole Bubble set is just full. Bubble.
Yeah, they got wing arm dude. That's kind of nice. They had wing arm dude.
Wing arm dude's got he's got a football, but again, easy to chop that hand off, give him a sword or an axe.
I bet that's the alternate version of Dracula.
Oh, is it? Oh,
might be because there's the shoulders look similar.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
I think you're right because you look at the cloak. Yeah, that's the same guy.
Interesting.
Yeah,
it is.
I love their fucking ruffles. Dude, like the Dracula dude,
yeah,
he's got the big fucking ruffly bow that's like hanging on top of his armor. Like I'm not skimping on my decor here, and
it's very fancy.
Yeah, this is a fancy vampire. Yeah. Okay. So then my brain would go to like, okay, we got the head, we have maybe the cloak, we maybe cut that bit off the sprue, and so you can kind of hold it and see how it looks coming off the back of the horse. Mm-hmm. And then my brain goes to, what is the big other changes I want to make? It's either the body entirely or the horse. I think the whole unit or the whole model, once fully kit bashed, still reads as Blood Knight if you use the Blood Knight horse, because those are so distinct. Then I would go back to looking at my options again. I do think those the spoopy horses, the Nighthaunt one, that's the
for the Black Knights,
Dread Blight Harrow.
Yeah, I have. Honestly, I think I have 6 of those.
Yeah, so
I think I bought them for another unit of Blood Knights.
And it might work better as a single one or as your lead one in there.
Yeah, definitely.
Like then you have a whole nother can of worms that you're going to open in. Like, there's not a real saddle or place to sit on those horses. I think they look badass. I think there's a lot of movement that work with the movement of that cloak you're talking about. But then you got to have them like look like they're, like their knees are tight against the side of the horse, like it's actually riding it.
Yeah,
pinched in, so they're not like floaty. Like if you see a floaty rider on a horse, you're just like, that's a floaty rider.
Yeah, like got this U-shaped legs, and it's not fitting on this perfectly. Yeah, actually, you're right. The Blood Knight horses don't have any bullshit on them. I think the rider and the horse are totally separate.
Are they? I haven't built one.
I built the 5. I can't remember.
Mine still have the plastic wrap on it in the box.
I'm trying to remember, but if those ones are totally free, that also is a super easy option just to use those horses. But I think it's cooler to have your commander have a unique mount.
Yes, I do too.
Yeah,
I think because of those horses, the horses all look samey same. They look badass, but they all look the same. Yeah. And so at the table, you probably wouldn't see a big differentiation.
Yeah,
but I think if you wanted a more stoic, static, like back is super straight and super regal, using that Nurgle one where that horse is just kind of like standing proud and dead.
Yeah,
you'd have to cover up the like lasered in Nurgle symbol, but on its haunches, but that's it.
Yeah, and I do think that female vampire from the Blood Bowl set, I don't think would work with that horse, because that horse is standing still, and that vampire lady is clearly leaning forward. It's like that they don't have the same like energy, right?
You can use the head bit though.
The head bit totally usable. Yeah.
And then it's a matter of finding a a regal kind of sitting real back straight. You can almost look at like the ones on the Coven throne where those ladies are sitting around the thing and they're sitting really straight back,
They
but sitting
are.
do fucking side saddle.
What about the Underworld's female with the sword through her hair? She's kind of just standing straight up, isn't she?
She is, yeah. Her back is real straight.
I don't know how easy it'd be to remove her head because the sword goes through her hair and shit. Like I don't know how possible that would be to like just
Ooh, yeah, it is all one piece.
yeah, just get the torso out of that. I don't think that'd be very simple.
Yeah.
But that is an idea. So is the Coven Throne vampires, the cushion bays that is laying about.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have any armor on them though. They're all in dresses.
That's almost more eerie.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she just like comes there into a full armed unit, and she still has a 3-up save, and you're like, "What's going on?"
You have a cursed Lady of the Lake.
What was happening?
Yeah. Someone put some vampire teeth on the Lady of the Lake, and now she's just fucking rocking around, just owning everybody. I love that. Well, that's my conversion idea. I'd love to give that a shot. I have like this whole story about how my lady transforms into Lockavai and how that like why that happened as my army grew in size in the Escalation League. I had a lot of fun coming up with like backstory. But yeah, that's me. I think we decided in the beginning that I was just gonna share my idea, and because that'd be long enough.
Yeah, we cranked out. I think that this is fun. One for us to. This is something that maybe the Goody Peepees don't know. That oftentimes when we're working on a project, whether it's for a competition or for conversion for our armies or ideas we have, historically we've had these kind of conversations.
And we share bits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we kind of try to brainstorm things. I think that's part of the fun, the problem solving, the trying to piecing it all together to find something unique. And maybe you think this kind of conversation, there is value to it, or it's in some level interesting. Let us know if this is a kind of a once in a while topic thing where it's like, hey, one of us is going to come with an idea, an issue, a question, and we're going to pose it to each other and see if we can problem solve and see what you guys think. So let us know. What are we calling this? Maybe the Goody Peepees also have to give us the name of what this.
Yeah, give us your idea for the name of this segment. That'd be fun.
Like the crafting corner.
Yeah, something like that.
The Cozy Kit Basher.
Now you're just handing out YouTube channel names right here.
Oh, God damn it.
The Cozy Kit Basher. Well, welcome to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out all the way to the end, listening to us hammer on about very highfalutin wargaming topics. We appreciate your patience with us and just in trying to discover what our dissertation would be if we ever had PhDs in miniature wargaming.
I'm sure that I can get that kind of PhD at like BYU or something.
Is BYU some like online college?
No, it's Brigham Young University. I think it's Mormon or something.
Okay. Yeah, fucking Brigham Young, dude.
Jesus. If you want to help support Brigham Young University, how can you do it, Scott?
You can do it through a number of ways, both free and not free. If you don't have any cash to spend, you can watch our videos whitelisted through various browser add-ons. We run an ad on YouTube here every 30 minutes. It doesn't cost you anything but your time, and it gives us some kickback if you watch those ads. You can also tell your nerd friends about our podcast so they can listen to it too. You can give us some reviews on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever you listen to them, about what your thoughts are on our podcast. Giving us reviews pushes the podcast to other people on those platforms. You can have, if you got some cash to spend, you can pick up some of our merch on Teespring. We have got joggers, we got t-shirts, we got cups, we got all kinds of fun stuff. And we also have, I think, 3 designs now at this point. Like a kind of a fast food one, kind of like a bone bird, like Tendy Destroyer one, and then the classic sprue-based one. So a lot of cool designs there for Tup on the Teespring. You can also support us on Patreon, where you get access to an extended episode where we talk about things like new techniques we've tried out in the hobby and have failed with and succeeded with, models painted by other folks that we like a lot, and we also give feedback to one of our patrons. So as a patron, you can submit models for us to give feedback to, and also as a patron, you give the opportunity to give us topics to chat about. So if you have ideas for our dissertation, give us those topics, and we'll maybe yammer on about them in a future episode.
And we're going to be back at you again in a fortnight. But until then, we will catch you on the
Flippity flop.